Good afternoon, everybody. It is great to see so many people join us for today's training. We're going to get started here in about 2 or 3 minutes. I see a lot of people trying to sign on to the audio now, and I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to get set up before I hand it over to our trainer today. So I'm going to mute the lines here for a minute, and then in about 2 or 3 minutes, we'll be back here and we'll get this kicked off. Okay, good afternoon again, everybody. I appreciate all of you signing on to join us for today's training. My name is Drexler Rotroff. I'm part of the marketing team here at Blue Mountain. Before we get kicked off and I hand it over to Vincent Scheidel, who will be doing our training today, I'm going to cover a couple of kind of housekeeping and logistic items. Vince, if you don't mind sharing your screen with our slides, we can get this kicked off. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so if any of you have joined in the past our labs or booths, I want to welcome you to our training today. This is something that that's new to us. We have not done this before. We have a huge number of customers on the webinar today, so we're going to do our best to make this a really valuable, worthwhile training. Today's session will be approximately 3 hours, and it's followed up by a session tomorrow on work plan templates and measurement data templates, which will also be about 3 hours long. Vincent Scheidel will be doing it today, and I know many of you know Vincent from work that he's done on site for you or with you, or you met him at the summit and seen previous presentations or trainings that Vincent's done. Vincent is a really great resource here at Blue Mountain. He'll do a fantastic job today. So welcome, Vincent.
Yep, it's good to be here. Thank you.
Yep. All right, good. Do you mind going to our next slide? So if, and just bear with me, if you've been on any of our labs in the booth in the past, you've seen these slides. We do them for anybody who's kind of new to Blue Mountain RAM or new to our online kind of customer community that we have going here. Today's training is a special event. Assuming that all goes well, we'll likely do more of these in the future. So we're very excited about it. And bear with us if we have any kind of hiccups throughout the presentation today or tomorrow. Also, in addition to that, if you have any ideas about content that you'd like to see in future sessions like today's, please let us know. Just chat it into the chat window there, or feel free to email marketing@coldblue.com. We'd love to hear what other trainings you'd like to see in a big group format like this. So thank you for joining our training today. In addition to today's training, we have 2 monthly webinars that are targeted towards our customers. The first is our customer lab. We try to keep it the first Wednesday of every month at 1 p.m. Eastern time, and that's meant to be a discussion or an open forum for customers. We typically pick a topic for those discussions and do a short presentation about 10 minutes long, and then open it to customers to discuss that topic. The second customer event that we have is called the Customer Boost. It's on the 3rd Thursday of every month at 2 p.m. Eastern time, and those are hour-long free training sessions that we have for RAM users. And again, those are on a very specific topic. On our boost coming up on May 21st, it is covering assets. The title of that boost coming up is Assets Explained. If you'd like to join us for those, please do. The registration link, I believe, is in the chat window of your GoToWebinar, so just sign up for those. When you register, you'll be joined to a recurring GoToWebinar event. So you'll be automatically signed up for them in all the months to come as well, and you'll get reminders for those as they come up. So please take a minute and fill that out if you're interested in joining us for those 2 additional customer events that we have. All right, do you mind going to the next slide? Also, a lot of the content that we'll cover here is available in our functionality e-learning. We have a free 7-day trial. If you're not familiar with the e-learning or you're not using it at your company, just take a minute, fill out the form, get the 7-day trial. You can see what's in it. You can see what the lessons are, how they're set up, the quizzes. If you do it all in 7 days, then you're able to take the certificates out of it, and that's great and available to that. But I wanted to offer it to our audience today. And the link for that is also in the chat window. All right, do you mind going to the next slide? Okay, and then last but not least, before we jump into how to participate in today's call, I want to invite all of you to our annual Blue Mountain RAM conference. This year, we're going to be doing it virtually, so it'll be online. It'll be 2 afternoons on both September 22nd and September 23rd. We have a series of customer presenters talking about RAM and some unique instances of what they've done at their site. We also have internal presentations from our team. We have announcements about the future of RAM. So all of that will be available during our Blue Mountain RAM conference in September. Because this is the first year we're doing it virtually, we will have limited seats. So I really, really advise you, if you want to come to that, please register sooner than later, because I want to make sure that technically we're able to have you join us, and we're able to have those that want to join us early get in the list, and we reserve a spot for them. Okay, Vince, do you mind going to the next slide? If you have any questions about this, again, feel free to send messages in the questions panel. I'd be happy to answer them. All right, we will be providing training certificates for today and tomorrow's session. The request link, if you'd like a certificate, we don't send them out by default. So if you'd like one, you'll need to fill out the request link. You can do that now. I think we can post it out now. Go ahead and do that now. We'll just verify that you were joined on the training throughout the actual training, and we can get you those certificates. So again, we'll provide a link to request a certificate each day, and we typically send those in PDF format to you. So please don't forget to do that. We'll make some announcements in the middle and at the end of the training sessions regarding the certificates for today. All right, do you mind going to the next slide? We would like to make today as interactive as possible through the training. We want to make sure we're answering questions as they come up. We have Josh Muir joining us today, who will be supporting us in answering text-based questions via the questions panel. So if you have questions, we have somebody standing by that will be able to provide answers to those as we're going through it. But if you'd like to ask Vince a question directly, you can raise your hand. We will unmute your microphone and you'll be able to ask it straight out during the session out loud. Everybody will be able to hear you. If you raise your hand, we do ask you that you identify yourself by your first name and the company that you're with to help kind of introduce yourself to us and to the audience. We will try to get to those as they come up. Sometimes we miss them in the go-to webinar attendee list, but again, feel free to raise your hand and we will get to you eventually with that. Okay, so I think with that said, Vince, do I have another slide here? I think I'm turning it over to you
now. Okay, let me see here. Unmute myself. Dude, how do I do that? There we go. Okay. No. There we go. I think it's working. Okay, so let's. Okay. So yeah, we're gonna get started here on queries today. I've loaded up like a demo instance of our best practices template. So that's what I'm going to be working with for the most part. Shouldn't necessarily matter too much for this training, what your configuration is. But I'm going to start off by going over here up to the go-to menu. And we're going to click on the query design underneath go-to query design. And I'm really just going to go over like the basics of the query designer itself, really try to touch on everything, all the different options. And then I'll go over, you know, maybe some ideas for some different queries, how to use macros and stuff like that. So to start off, we are going to go into the assets folder. So you'll see here, when you go to the query design, it looks very similar to just the regular query section. You know, if I were to come down here and click on the queries section, really not much changes other than the fact it says queries up in the top left rather than query designer. So let me switch back into query design. And what I'm going to do is open up the assets folder because I want to make an asset query. So you just want to open up the folder of the record type to try to make a query of. And I'm just going to start off with just the equipment. So I'll click on the equipment queries, and this is where we display the queries that are available, that are available for you to edit. Okay, so this may not show you all queries in the system because you may not have edit rights in the system to actually edit that query. So it'll only show queries that you actually have the rights to edit. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to create a new query. So you can see with that new button, that blank piece of paper up at the top left-hand side, we have that new button. So I'm going to click on that. And so this is the query builder, the query designer. The first thing that we have up here is the name. That's the first thing we got to do is name this query. So really, you know, we want this to make as much sense as possible. So maybe if I want to do, you know, all laboratory equipment, all lab equipment, something like that. That's a pretty simple name for a simple task that that query is trying to run, but sometimes it can get a little complex. But I try to keep my query names as close to the function of it as possible, because sometimes I've seen some systems with, just work list, and I've seen, there's like 10 different queries in there that are roughly saying the same thing, and it's hard to tell exactly what each one's trying to accomplish. But so start off by just naming this one all lab equipment. That's the query name. So the query type and record type. So this was already pretty much set whenever we opened up the assets folder and clicked on equipment. Query type, assets, record type, equipment. So we really don't have to do anything there. Next, you can give this a query description if you'd like. This is an optional description. So this would be pretty simple. Show all equipment where part is, or just put, equal to lab. And then the next option down we have is shared and is private, right? So these two radio buttons will determine whether this is a shared query or a private query. Now, a private query, everyone in the system can make their own private query. And what that does is, that means that only that user can access and view that query. All right. Now, a shared query is the queries that everyone can view, but only a certain restricted amount of people should be able to make those shared queries. You don't necessarily want to open those rights up to everyone, because then it really can clutter up the system with a bunch of queries. So I'm going to start off right now with just starting off with a private query, and then I'm going to go, we have 4 different tabs down here, right? We've got our column headers, criteria, sorting, flags. So in the column headers tab, what we can do to start creating new column headers is clicking on the insert button. That insert button is the blue square button with the green arrow on it. So second one in. So we're going to click on the insert button. And you can see these are all of the options that we have for our column headers. Now you'll notice here we have the current field name, field ID, which is kind of, may not be that useful for you. And then we also have the original label. So if this field has been renamed, maybe you'll see the what it was originally called. Really, what we care about is the current field name. So you don't necessarily need to know the original label. We just want to take a look at this current name. So to add column headers into our query, all you need to do is just double click. So you can double click, you see it gets grayed out and it gets added in here. So you can kind of just go through the list and double click on it. Alternatively, you can use the control, you can highlight one and use the control button to select individual ones that you want, and click the add button down at the bottom. Also, that would work for shift as well. So you just click on one record, scroll down a bit, holding down the shift key, clicking on another item highlights multiple rows. And then you can click add and it will add those in. So let's sort this off back off field ID. So scrolling down, you'll see there's a lot of fields on here, and that's really what queries pull information from, is all of your fields. Okay, now one field that it does not pull information in from would be the comments field. So those fields that are 2,000 characters or more, they will not appear as an option to add as a column header. But you also do have some flags in here as well. So you can see here, flag is e-signed or is locked, is it in a loop? So if I were to put in here maybe in a system. So, is this equipment in a system? If I double click on that, now I'm going to have a column that's going to be a yes or a no, depending on if it is actually in a system. And what this does is allows me to filter off of that. Every column that you add in gives you the ability to quick find that column. Okay, so it may be helpful to see in your asset lists or your work lists. A lot of people say, well, I don't care about most of that information. I just want to see the ID and a couple other fields. So they'll only add a handful of columns in there. But that restricts their quick finding ability on that query. So my idea is, or my just way that I make queries is the more the merrier. So the more columns you have gives you more abilities to quick find later off that query, even though you may only care for like a handful of them. So this flag right here, in a system, it'll be on or off depending on if it'll be a yes or a no, depending on if it's in a system, and therefore you could quick find off of that. Same is true for all these other flags. In multiple systems, calibration failed is out of calibration tolerance, stuff like that. So once you're done adding columns, well, actually before we move on from adding columns, you can actually switch what columns you want to add from to this query. There is a drop down at the top left. It lists equipment. I'm in an equipment query, so it's showing all of the equipment fields. However, I can switch to some of the related record types, because I could pull in some schedule information. Maybe I could pull in the due date for the equipment, or the event, some event information or work information. And if it's a standard, I can pull some of that information in. So if I go to schedules, now I have some of this information. I can put in their due date. I can put in their scheduled person, maybe. Now, what I would say is, I would warn you, is that you can put in asset schedule columns in here. However, I would warn you that, if that asset has multiple schedules, then we're going to have, if an asset has multiple schedules for that one asset, then that asset's going to have multiple rows in this query, one for each of the different due dates and, scheduled persons that it may have. So that can throw off record counts really quickly. Also, if it doesn't have a schedule attached to it, then it won't show up in this query anymore. So what I would say I see sometimes people try to make their, coming due list from an asset query. I would say that may not be the best place to do it. I would suggest doing it in the schedules section. So that's where you're really querying off of what's coming due, the due date, and that schedules window. So I would start from there to find out what's coming due and build one of those queries. I would kind of shy away from adding schedules and events because, if it doesn't have an event attached to it or work orders, it may not show up, or it'll show up multiple times. So let's say if I wanted to now delete these, the due date and the scheduled person, what I would want to do is highlight it and click the remove button, which is right next to the insert button, and it's the blue box with a red X. So I can just kind of click on that twice, really. Additionally, the other buttons in here, we have the 2 arrow buttons. So this is to move fields around. So if I need to, if I want to move my description up, maybe move the department down a bit, I can use these arrows to rearrange my my column headers. And the way that it works is it's going left to right starting from the top. And then this first button here, this is the edit button. So you can highlight a field. Let's do description, and click the edit button. And what this does is it allows you to do two things. One is change the column width in pixels. So maybe, they're all defaulted to 120. So maybe for description, I want it a little bit bigger. Let's do 200. Click OK. And then maybe, installation date, I can make that one smaller. So I'll edit that. Make it 90. So that's how you change the default width of all these columns. And the other thing that is available in the edit, via the edit button, is the changing the column alias. So that's going to be changing what appears at the top, how that, let me go back to my workspace here. Yeah, so these are the column aliases up here, status, asset type, description. So, I could change where it says description, I could change it to maybe asset description or something like that. So if you wanted to change what displays up here, you can do that. A good use case for that would probably be with those schedule queries. You may want to pull in on a schedule query, maybe the asset status and maybe the work status, so you'll have two columns that both say status. And actually the Blue Mountain won't let you save your query if that's true, if you have two columns that have the same exact alias, I believe. So you would want to change one of those aliases to say the asset status and one to say the work status. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to go ahead and save my query and click OK. And then, now that I've saved my query, what I can do is actually click on this very last button up at the very top. Okay, it's the preview query button. It's got the magnifying glass with the little piece of paper. And when you do that, it'll open up a second window and kind of show you what the query looks like. So you can see here my description is larger. I can see how the column rows will look. Now, this is really only going to show you like one page of records. It's really just kind of a quick preview to see how your columns look, to see if it's even pulling any information in. So it's not really supposed to be a full-blown query. So I do find that pretty helpful when I'm designing queries. Okay, so the next tab, this is probably the most important tab. And then we'll click on the criteria. So this is how I'm going to filter. These are kind of baked in filters on this query. Quick finds are nice because they are kind of a temporary filter for that query, but if you want to bake in a filter into that query, you got to do it here in the criteria. So to do that, again, we're going to click on that insert button with the blue box and the green arrow. And then we're going to choose the field that we want to filter on. So record type equipment, we don't have to do anything there. Really the next decision we got to make is this field drop down. So I'm going to click on this, and again, I want to sort off the department where the department equals lab. So I'm going to find that department right here. Field ID is just displayed there, so you don't have to do anything. We do have a value type where it's normal. Okay, there will be in certain field types like date fields or personnel fields, the option to switch into a macro will show up here for the value type. Other than that, we don't have to do anything here. We just leave it to normal. And so next is the function. So we do have some options in here, begins with, ends with, and whatnot. So yeah, we just want to do equal to, maybe even just contains lab. We'll click OK. And alternatively, you can actually even use, if you just, if you're looking at this value button here, this value field, you can use this ellipses button to find to look at the current field values. So I click on that, and you can see, oh, these are some field values that exist out there. Now, this isn't every entry in this pick list. These are just these are from all the records that actually have data. So I think I have like 7 departments that are in this pick list. However, all of my assets are only using these 4 values. So that's what's populating right here. So I could filter, department begins with lab. Maybe it's a really just like a lot of values in here. So I click that little magnifying glass and just double click on what I want. So you can use this little ellipses to kind of see the records that are currently in your system, pull all those values and select one. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and save my query again. And then that should open up the ability to preview the query. So I'm going to click on that again. And we'll reload my preview. As you can see, now I've shrunk down to just 2. There's only 2 in here with a department equal to laboratory. It begins with lab. Okay, so I guess this may be a good time to stop now for any questions. Is there anything out there that we would like to address?
Hey Vince, this is Savannah. I think Drexel maybe stepped away, so I was just going to read. There is one question that came in so far. Okay. And it is that they missed the first explanation, so can you show again how to enter a criteria?
Mm-hmm. Yep, so to enter in a new criteria, what we want to do is click on the insert button. That's going to be the second button in here with the it's the blue box and the green arrow. So that's what brings up this add criteria. Most of the time, the things that we really care to fill in here would be the field, the function, and the value. So we want to select the field that we want to filter off of, department, and then value type. This will have the option to switch into a macro if you're using either personnel or date. Otherwise, we don't have to really worry about it. We just leave it as is. Function equal to, you can choose another one in here, and then value. So we'll type in here maybe metrology. So I will just type in a value of MET. I'll click this ellipses button, and it'll kind of automatically do a little search for MET. Bake it right in there. So boom, here's metrology. I'll double click on it, click OK. So that's it, really, with the insert button.
We also have a few hand raises, actually. So okay. Do you want me to unmute some? Okay.
Yep.
Let's see. We have John first. Hi, John. Are you there?
I think you got me confused with John. Dave Zakrzewski of Phoenix, Dunkirk.
Hi, John. Yeah, I thought your hand was raised. If you don't have a question, that's okay.
No, I have a question. It's this is Dave. Yeah, this is Dave Zakrzewski, Dunkirk, Phoenix.
Oh, okay. I think it's just coming. I think your registration is just showing up as somebody else at Phoenix. Sorry about that.
That's no problem. Question is, if ever I want to change it from a private query to a shared query, do I have to redo everything all over again, or can I switch it over manually somehow or another.
Yep, you can do that under the actions, and that's the first option right there. Actions, make shared query. So that will switch it from is private into shared.
Oh, okay.
It's a little bit more complex than that because you also need to then follow it up with setting security rights, and that's a whole section that I was going to cover later. So you want to click make shared query and then also follow it up by setting the security rights for that.
Beautiful. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, next we have Alicia, I believe.
Can you hear me?
Hi, Alicia, are you there?
Hi there, yes.
We can hear you.
My question was, there was, I'm getting a lot of feedback, apologies.
We're getting a little mic feedback.
Yeah.
We're getting a little bit of feedback. Do you mind typing your question in the questions panel?
Where's that at?
Actually, you can try now. I don't know. It maybe had stopped the feedback. If you can repeat. Sorry, we just didn't hear it.
Okay. You mentioned that if it's got flag in parentheses, it sounds like it's in like basically a query within a query. You have a box. You can check either yes or no. Is that correct?
So what it will do is, let me see here on my display. I put this as the very last option. So you'll see here, flag, it shows up as a query in here, flag in system, off or on. So I guess that's what it's either an off or an on that it shows up. So what that, an off would mean no, that it's not in a system currently. And this on means yes, it is currently in a system. So it's not like, I don't know if it's necessarily a query within a query. Maybe it is, but that's kind of the idea of it. Because there's flags, like if I would actually go to this record, TC011. So TC011, open this up. You'll notice that there's little flags up here, right? In the top right, in loop, in system, you know, is a loop element, is a system element. So because this flag is currently on, because it is actually in a system, I can go view, hierarchy, and see the system that it's currently in. So that's why it has this little flag. So that's, you know, this flag in system is on for this equipment. And therefore, if I add that column to my column headers, it displays as being a flag that's on for this equipment. So I can kind of see, I can kind of take a look to see all of my system, all of my equipment that are currently in systems. I can just kind of do a quick find off of this column right here, you know, in system equal to on. Boom, that shows you all your equipment that's in a system. Does that kind of help answer?
To be honest with you, I'm not quite clear on that. I'm a relatively new user, so
okay.
Yeah. We'll
okay. Okay. Yeah, I mean, like a system. I don't know if you're familiar with a system or not. It's you know, it's like it's an asset. It's another type of asset that an equipment can actually be linked to. So really, it's this flag is just displaying that it is linked to another system. And there's lots of different flags. That's just one example. There's some that let's see here, that might be kind of better to take a look at. You know, is it? I think is locked. You know, is it currently locked for editing? You know, when you're looking at an equipment, it'll. Let me open up an active one. It's just active one. Oh, this one's not even locked. You know, sometimes there's a little padlock up here that says, you know, it's locked for editing. You can't edit it. So really, what it does is it allows you to query on that flag to see if that flag is true or, you know, on or off for those. And it's weird how it puts it as on and off, but that's kind of how it works. Switch back here. Oops. So hopefully that helps. Okay.
We do have one more hand raised for now. We have Chloe.
Yeah.
Hi, Chloe.
Hi, I don't have a question. I don't know what happened.
Oh, okay, no problem.
It's all good.
I'll just put your hand down. All right, and then I think we're all caught up on, oh, there's one more question that came in. It is, can you use a date range?
Yes, you can use a date range. You know, we're looking at equipment now, so you may, if you know, maybe if you have like that due date in there, you can use a date range. I am going to use an example of a date, like a date range query, later when we get to work. So yeah, we'll cover that later, and I'll kind of come back and say, okay, this is how you do a date range. Yeah, but the answer is yes, you can do that.
All right, those are all the questions for now, so we can keep on going through if you'd like.
Cool. So this is my criteria. Okay, so I have my join operator here. So I've got two different departments in here, excuse me. Department contains laboratory, department equal to metrology. And what it's saying is, do both of these need to be true or either one, right? If I were to keep this to and, where both the department contains laboratory and the department is equal to metrology, this query is not going to return any records, okay? Because the department needs to be set to both lab and metrology at the same time. And you can only have one entry in each one. So you can see there's no records returning because nothing has a department that is both laboratory and metrology. It's either one or the other. So what I want to do is switch to OR. And then click Save. And now this should show me everything that is laboratory and metrology. So that is our join operator. And once we get to our work orders, I will try to show you how this join operator can go a little, it can be a little bit more difficult once you start adding a lot of different filters in here. So I'm going to close this. Okay, so that's going to be pretty much it for the criteria for now. I'm going to get to work orders and we're going to go a little bit more in depth. But you can also delete criterias in, with the remove and also edit them with that edit button, same as double clicking on them. And then you can shuffle them around with the up and down. And I will get into the remaining criteria group buttons later. Next up, we have the sorting. Sorting is just choosing how we're going to sort this query. So we're going to click on the insert button. And, you know, most common people commonly people choose the asset ID or the work ID or something like that. But let's say, you know, you can choose to sort by department. As you can see, I can actually choose multiple methods of, you know, multiple options of sorting. What does that do? Effectively, what it says is we're going to sort this query first off of the top row here. So we're going to sort by asset ID. Then we will sort by department and then acquisition cost. In fact, I'll just remove this. So sorting off of asset ID first will pretty much put everything in an ascending order. So there's really no use for me to sort then off of department. You'll notice here, you know, my lab, and I've got 3 metrology, then another lab, because it's really just going alphabetically off of this. However, if I were to reverse this and put the department first, save it, hit OK. And so this is what happens sometimes, like if you're editing your query and you don't close out of the preview, you click this preview button again. All it does is just really bring this window back to the front. And so sometimes you need to you either need to close out of this window and click the button again, or you can just simply press the F5 key to kind of give it a little refresh. You'll notice that I'm no longer sorting off of my asset ID first, but I'm sorting off of my department first. So labs are first alphabetically. And then within each of these departments, within the departments, I then sort off of the asset ID. Okay, so that's why it's 1, 2, 3, and then the B comes before the T. So really it's order sorting, you know, how you want to group them, and then how would you like to continue to sort them. But if you do something like an ID, it'll just sort them all. There's no real grouping of asset IDs that have multiple, the same asset IDs. So if you're doing an ID, you don't really need to add in any other sorting methods. And then finally, we do have the flags. So this is different than the column. So I do have this in system column, which will be either an on or an off. I also have the ability to add the in system flag to this query. Now, what does that do? Don't I already have a column with this in there? Well, what this flags tab in here does is actually gives you a little graphical flag in the very beginning, right? The first column is going to be a flags column, so maybe I could do in system and, I don't know, maybe out of cal tolerance or something like that. So I can add a couple different flags in here. Let me refresh this. And it gives me a little space for my flags. So yes, I do have a flag in system field over here, but I also have the graphical representation. It's really easy. You can just take a look and see, you know, what's in a system just by scrolling through it right here. The difference between the two is that you cannot filter off of these flags. You can only quick find and filter off of the other columns. So that's why if you want to search off of you know, the flag, if it is in a system or not, you would want to add it as a column header, not just simply come here to the flags section and check it off. You know, you could do both if you'd like. Okay, so that is the flags portion there. And that's pretty much it for all of the, well, for now, the criteria. What I'm going to do is switch into a work query. So it's a pretty basic asset query that you could make. So I'm going to come down here. I'm actually going to, before I switch, I'm going to refresh my little query design space right here. Use that refresh button next to the red X. And so you see, there's my new query that I put in there, all lab equipment. You'll notice that it has a little asterisk next to it. That's because it is a private query. So every query that you see with an asterisk is a query that you've made. It's a private query that you made. So that's the distinction that we use. All right, so next up, we'll go down to work here, and I'm going to, I'll use the all work for now. Okay, so I'm going to go to all work, and what I'm going to do is I will go to the open work query, and instead of just clicking on the new button, sometimes what I like to say is just go to a query that's already there, right click on it and click add similar. Right, so what this does is it copies the query, essentially all of the column headers criteria, sorting, and flags information. It copies all of that information. You can see the query name does not get copied in, and later we'll talk about it, but the rights will not get copied in either. You can see also the description copies over as well. So here for the column headers, if I want, I could switch these around if I wanted to, but I don't need to do that for now. Query name. What I want to do is come up with a work list for everything that's due this month, let's say. So I'm going to do this month's work. All right, and I will I'm going to also make this one a shared query, and then we will go over the security rights. If you're doing a private query, you don't need to worry about setting the security rights. They're already automatically defaulted to you. But if we're doing a shared query, we will have to come in here at the end and set these security rights. Okay, so column headers, we can leave those as they are. Criteria, you will see that this query only had one criteria, status equal to open. And I can go ahead and delete that, or I can just save it if I want. What I want to do is click on the insert button, right? So this is, as the question was brought up earlier, date ranges. How can we do date ranges? So this is what we do to how we use date ranges. So I want to choose the due date. So I'm going to find everything that's due within this month, the month of May. So I'm going to switch to the due date field here, and then the function, instead of it being equal to a certain date, I'm going to do greater than or equal to, and you can choose from the calendar, the beginning of the month. So I'll do the due date is greater than or equal to the 1st of May. The greater than or equal to a certain date would mean past that date, past or on that date. So greater than or equal to the 1st of May, and this is where we would need to also use a second criteria to kind of, because that means it could be, some due in June or July or something like that. So we don't care for that. We just can see what's due in May. So we'll also select the due date again for the second criteria. Function is going to be less than or equal to, and I will choose the end of the month. Click OK. Click save, and then let's see what's due this month. So I'm going to run the preview for my query. Okay, so it looks like we have a couple things that are due this month. Due date, yep, all on the 31st of May. So that's pretty much how you would do that. Now, obviously, what's going to happen to this query once we go into June? Okay, do I have to manually come back here? Yes, you'd have to manually come back here, which is why we also would prefer to use what's known as the macros. Okay, so there's a way that you can use macros so that you don't have to constantly come in here every month and update these date ranges. So instead of just choosing the 1st of May, what we can do is, you can see that value type, I can switch to macro instead of doing normal. So macro would be the LC, so you can see my values changed from a calendar to this weird kind of what it is, like a SQL kind of statement thing. So we have the LCL add date. So that'd be the local add date plus 0. What this means is today's date plus 0, which would just mean today. So if I were just to click OK on this, then I would be looking at due date that is greater than or equal to today's date. So, if I were just to leave my query like this, due date is greater than or equal to today's date. I can run it today, and then I would only see everything that's due on the 12th of May to the 31st of May. And then when I run it tomorrow, it'd be the 13th of May to the 31st of May, and so on and so forth. So we don't necessarily want to use that macro. There's another macro that we can use. To do that, unfortunately, because with date, with the date fields, there's actually several different types of macros. And the one that we use is not this, it's not actually the one that we want to use is not this default macro. So really, we can leave it as normal. And the value we want to type in here is the @month start plus 0 at. Okay, so that means whatever month we're in, go to the start of the month. Okay, so the due date is greater than or equal to the start of May. And then we can do the same thing for due date less than or equal to, we just want to switch it to @month end plus 0 at. Hit OK. So those are our macros for keeping the date range in this, looking at this current month. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this. And especially when you start working with macros, you definitely want to be previewing the query just to make sure you didn't type in the macro wrong, right? So, okay, maybe if you were to type in month start different, have a typo, it would mess up the what it would return here. So, and I can come in here and say, okay, due date, yeah, all 31st of May. It's not showing me anything last month, and not showing me anything next month. So that's if you want to see everything that's due this month. If you want, we can use the default macro, which is the LCL add date. We can maybe say, let's take a look at everything that was due within the last 7 days and what's due in the next 7 days, right? So for that, we can go back to our macro here, greater than or equal to LCL add date, which is in English means today's date. And if I want to look at everything that was due within the past 7 days, I can actually back this off by clicking on the minus button. So it would be today's date minus 7 days. So we're going to go back to be 7 days from today's date and find me everything that was due with a due date greater than that. Okay, so now it's going to look at the last 7 days, and I can switch this one to be the macro again. And if I want to, see everything that's coming due within the next 7 days, I want to click the plus button. Today's date plus 7. So here's my 2-week window that I got, right? So that's how you use that plus or minus at the end. That's what that plus 0, plus 1, or whatever. So, you can use the month macro or the LCL add date macros to kind of, depending on what you're trying to look at, multiple months or multiple days. What you're trying to, what's the unit that you're trying to filter off of, the month or the day. And let me switch back to my month here. So what a lot of people will do, on start plus 0 at, and then month end plus 0. So what some people like to do is make queries for, maybe this month's work, and then they would also like to make a query for what's coming due next month. So you can have 2 different queries to see what's due this month, what's due next month. So if I want to see what is due next month, I would just change this month start to be +1. So it's not going to be the start of this month, but the start of next month. And then month end, I don't want to end it on this month. I want to end it on the end of next month. So this would be a good what's due next month query. And maybe, you could take this month start. We could do month start, -1 to include everything that was due last month as well. Start of last month to the end of next month. That would be our time window. Finish here. Okay. Now, what you may want to do for this work query, and what a lot of people like to do, is turn this into really more of a live work list to see what's still due. So therefore, if it's if a work order reaches the closed or canceled state, then I don't want to see it necessarily in this query anymore. So that as things are getting completed in the month, this list will get shorter and shorter and only show you what is still due. So to do that, we can just click on that criteria, insert field. Let's go ahead and get the status. And what we want to do here is we want to do status, instead of doing status equal to open, status equal to in progress, status equal to maybe hold or something like that. What I like to do is just say what it's not equal to. I don't want it to be equal to closed. So if it is in the closed state, don't display it in this query. And if it's in the canceled state, not equal to canceled. So that gives you more of a live work list of what's due this month. And then another thing that you can do is have this maybe be a live work list for each individual technician, right? So that when a technician comes to this query, they don't just see all of the work that's due for everyone. They only see what's due for themselves, where they're the assigned person, all the work that's assigned to them. So to add that little filter in there, I'm going to click on the insert. So I want to find the assigned person. And what I want to do is switch the value type to macro. There's only one macro for the personnel. So we can safely switch it to the value type to macro. And that is the @display name. So click OK there. So that really is just going to take the display name of whoever's viewing this query and then go find all the work that's due for them this month. So kind of this little setup that I have right here is more like a mirror that every time a technician or a user just views this query, it's just it's only going to display what's due for them and not anything else. And that's useful if you're actually assigning work orders to people. So if it's more of a pile method where you're just kind of taking work orders as people see them, they just kind of take them, then you wouldn't want to do that method. So we've discussed a little bit about macros. And if you want to know more about macros, what you can do is, and how many macros there are available to you, what you can always do is go to the help menu up here in the top left-hand corner. So the help menu, user guide. When you click on this, it'll open up in your web browser a PDF, and I've just so happen to have one downloaded here. And you can see here in the table of contents, it is the using macros in a criteria statements, 7 macros explained. So page 86 is the page that we want to go to. So I'll just click on that right here, and it shows you in a table the 7 macros that we have. Okay, so that would be the display name. So this is the one personnel field macro that we have. So it kind of gives you an example and a description in here. We have the LCL add date, so that's kind of, we went over that a little bit, plus or minus. It takes today's date, and you can add days to that or go back from today's date. Then there's just the LCL date. You can see, you can just type in there, LCL date. So if you want to just say, have a query that says everything that's due today, you can just type in there due date equal to at LCL date, today's date. And that would display everything that's due today. Then we also have the UTC versions for both of those. So UTC add date, UTC date. And then we have our month end and month start. So if you ever want to use this as a reference, it's page 86, page 86 in the user manual. To go back to that. Okay, so what I'm going to get into next is a little bit more of the advanced filtering options that we have. So let me see here. Let me run this query. Let's see what we have here. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. I will, I'm going to add a new criteria to this. Let's say I want to further refine my query to just show me, everything where the asset descriptions equal to weight set and temperature. Asset description contains weight set or temperature indicator. So we'll click the insert button, and we want to go off of the, you may want to do departments. I just want to see all work orders that are due for these departments or these particular assets. So let's do, where is it at? Asset description contains to weight set. And then we'll do another one. Asset description contains, we'll do temperature indicator. And then actually I'll add a third one in here. We'll just do freezer. So this should not impact the query whatsoever. So description, where's that? Equal to freezer. Hit OK. So what we need to do is start using these join operators as or, right? So we want to have asset descriptions equal to weight set, or asset descriptions contains temperature indicator, or the asset description is equal to freezer. Okay. So we want any of these to be true. And if there's any other work orders that don't have those descriptions out there, I don't want to see them in this. So I'm going to save this, hit OK. And I'm going to refresh this query just to make sure that my query hasn't changed. But suddenly, now I've got more records. How'd that work? My query shouldn't have changed at all. Literally, I chose the 3 descriptions that I had on those, 6 work orders. Why does it now have more descriptions? It's got a work order that's in here that's closed. You know, isn't that part of my status? Or status not equal to closed. Why is this closed status in there? Scroll through here, due date. Oh, I've got ones that are going to due last September. I've got stuff that it doesn't even have a due date. You know, that's not within my due date range. What's going on? It's like my query broke as soon as I started using this OR. The way that it works, because that's kind of how I've seen it happen, is people are like, oh man, it broke everything as soon as I started using these OR operators. The way that this works is that it thinks very much linearly. Linearly? Yeah, whatever. So really the computer's going to read this like, okay, I'm going to find you all work where the due date is greater than or equal to the end of the month or the start of the month. And the due date is less than or equal to month end. And it's not equal to closed. And it's not equal to canceled. And the description contains this. Or I'll find you all work orders that contain temperature indicator. Or I'll give you everything that's a freezer. So you can see here, all this stuff that I had in here with ands, they're all grouped together. And then as soon as I switch to or, the machine's like, okay, or I'll give you any work orders that contain this, or any work orders that contain this. So what we want to do is start using the new criteria group button. So I'm actually going to delete my asset descriptions. 2, 3. And I want to use this new criteria group. Boom. This button right here, it's got a little folder on it. And as you can see, now I've got a little folder entry in here. And it says 0 items, double click to view or edit. So if I double click on this folder, this will actually go into the folder. So now I'm in the folder, there's 0 items in here. Now, if I kind of add those in quickly again, equal to description. Okay, so now I've got all my ORs. Any of these need to apply. Okay. Now I can actually go back up out of this folder by clicking on the very last button over here, move up level. Boom. So now I'm up out of that folder. So you can see now I've got 3 items in there. They all have this OR, so any of them can apply. So now it's going to read like we want it to. Okay, I'll find you where all of these things are true and any of these are true. Okay, so now if I save this, okay, come back over here, refresh it. So now you can see, okay, I'm back to my original 5 that I had that are all in the open state, that are not in the close or cancel, and they're all due in this date range, and they are those descriptions, you know, or departments or whatever you want to use. So that's kind of how you use the criteria grouping. I like to think of them, most of the time people use them, they really just use them as or, like containers or buckets or, you know, folders. Like it's a folder to put all of your or statements in, because you want all of these and statements to apply to all of the or statements. That's when you want to use a criteria group, and you can actually use criteria groups within them. So if I wanted to, you know, kind of keep going down the rabbit hole, I can make another one. If I want, I can remove that too. Or I can have maybe 2 of these criteria groups in here. So criteria groups is where it starts to get a little complicated. There's also the ability to switch your view. And this is, from design view to tree view. And this is more useful when you start having these criteria groups, just to kind of see what the overall layout looks like. Okay, due date's greater than, okay, all this ands, and then here's my little criteria group, all my OR statements that I have. All these apply, and any of these apply. So you can switch back and forth from design to tree view. Click save on that, okay? Okay, let's see, Savannah, is there any other questions out there? Drexel or whoever's there?
Sorry about that. I was reading the question, but my phone was still muted. So Josh has been actually going through and answering a lot of the questions as they've been coming in. But we did have one that somebody asked if you could show again how to enter work configuration.
How to enter work configuration. What do they mean by that? Could they elaborate?
Yeah, let's see if they can elaborate a little. We'll just give a few minutes here.
Yeah.
And I don't think we have any hand raises as of right now either.
Okay.
Okay. I don't know if we just want to proceed on, and if they write back in with more detail of what they were asking, that we can cover it at your next stop.
Yep. Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, let's go. We'll go here for, we're approaching the halfway point in about 10 minutes. So we'll go for a little bit more. And then we'll stop for a break at the halfway point. So let's go to the actions menu. So we did already talk about the shared query. If it is a private, you can make it shared with this first option. But now that it is shared, you have to set the security rights. You don't forget, this is a very important step. Otherwise, nobody's going to see your query that you've made. So we want to click set security rights. So we have a couple different options in here. Execute, lock, maintain query, maintain security, and unlock. So the three most important ones are the execute and the maintains. So execute query means who can view it, who has the ability to view it. Currently, everything's stamped in with your username. So what we want to do is click the insert button, and we want to choose which group we want to share this with. So you could choose a particular group, maybe, if you're calibration executor group or something like that. If you just want everyone to see it, it doesn't matter. At the very bottom, the very last group is the access group. So it's got that little, in parentheses, access. So this means everyone who has access to the system. So most of the time, that's what we see, is just everyone comes down here and they double click on that to give them, everyone in the system, the rights to view their query. So when we're in this add security items, you can also choose people to deny it if you want. So if anyone's in the calibration viewer group, click deny and then close. So you can see they will be denied. Now, denies always override a grant, right? So if they're in the access group, but they're also in this calibration viewer group, then that means they will be denied rights to view the query. So most of the time I just see people add in the access group to the execute. Now, maintain query, this is very important. This means who can actually come in here and edit the query. Currently, it's only you that has your user login. So, you know, you and only you will see it as an option back here in the query design area to edit this query. So what we want to do is, if you're a best practices template user, you want to put in here the query administrator group. And if you're not using the best template package, you want to put in some admin group in there so that, you know, if you win the lottery tomorrow and, you know, you're gone, then other people can actually come in here and see how these queries were set up. You know, well, what was the criteria for this query? Otherwise, nobody can see it. So we want to do the maintain query and maintain security. We want both of those to be an administrator group. So with the best practices template, it's very easy. You just put in the query administrator group. Now this lock and unlock, this is actually a feature of the query itself. Now that security, maintain security, is actually who has the ability to maintain this security. I should have said that. Now you can actually lock this query. This is something that I don't really see people ever use. What it does is it locks it for editing. So it's, oh, I can't change anything. It's just, it is what it is, and I can't change anything. Nobody can change it. And then, you know, is unlock it to edit it again. And so what you could do is, and this is pretty much the smartest way to do it, is you can lock the queries that you've made. You know, if you don't want other admins in there editing it. Usually though, that's not usually a problem. And then you're the one that can unlock it. So if you want to, when you're done, lock this query so that nobody else can edit it, and then you can only you can unlock it later to make edits to it. Okay, so that is the set security rights. Make sure to do that every time you make a shared query. And with that, it's probably a good time to break for a minute so we can do fill up your coffee, use the restroom and whatnot. So then I guess I will leave the PowerPoint open, right? Is that it?
Yeah. Hey, Vince, this is Drexel. If you don't mind going back up to, yeah, I was going to kind of talk through the slides again briefly.
Do you want to be the presenter?
Yeah, no, could I? No, because I don't have the slides up on my. I can if you leave them up, I'll just talk to. I can just talk through them a little bit. While we take a break here, I was just going to remind everybody of a couple of things. First of all, we're really looking for, you know, we want to encourage participation and make sure that you have a chance to ask all the questions you want to ask throughout the training here. So really, please don't hesitate to either chat them in. Again, Josh is kind of staying by answering chat messages as they come in so that Vince can keep talking, or feel free really to raise your hand and ask him on the kind of the breaks that we take throughout here. And we're happy to do that either way. We want to make sure that this is a really meaningful training for you all and that you enjoy it and come back for day 2 tomorrow. Also, if you have ideas for future trainings, we'd love to hear it. If there's an area of the application that you'd like to spend a couple hours on that you think you could benefit from or that would work well in this group setting, like please feel free to chat it into us in the chat panel or the questions panel, or to email marketing at Coldblue. We're looking for ideas, and we want to get feedback. This is the first time we've done a long training like this with a big group of people. And we want to make sure it's valuable, and if it works well, we'd like to repeat it. So that, and then a couple of links in the chat panel that we've sent out are links to the labs and the booths. And again, feel free to register for those. You actually get signed on a recurring session with those. It's a recurring go-to meeting that happens once a month. And that'll send you reminders as it's coming up, and we'll send you the topic before that day of the actual either the lab or the booth. So keep in mind that's definitely a good event. Those are 2 good events that we've been doing for a few years now, and want to encourage as many people to attend those as possible. If you haven't taken a look at our summit website, it's thebluemountainsummit.com. That is, we're planning for it in September on the 22nd and 23rd, 2 afternoon sessions. Again, we'll be using a platform similar to GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar for that. And we will have limited seats. Unfortunately, we can only handle so many registrations. So if you're interested in coming to that, please make sure you register for that as soon as you can, just to make sure that you're on the list and you don't get cut off in that. Let's see here. I think that's all my announcements. Savannah, is there anything you want to add to our announcements here while we're taking a break?
I don't believe so. Just to reiterate that all the links that Drexel was just going over can be found in the chat window. And also, I didn't know if you had mentioned this, but even if you have other people in your organization who might want to attend any of the booths or might also want just to join the training or anything, we can get you you can either copy and paste that link, or we can provide you with the link for those. If there's anybody who would like to attend the training tomorrow, I can actually post that in the chat window as well. And then just feel free to share those registration links with anybody else in your organization.
Yeah, that sounds great, and that's a great idea to also share the link for tomorrow's training too. The one thing I didn't touch on, there's a training certificate request form in there. Go ahead and fill it out if you haven't already. We've got a bunch in so far, but if you haven't already, go ahead and fill it out. And we want to make sure that we send you the appropriate training certificate along with that.
And then, Drexel, I guess just for everybody who's typing in some questions, if there are questions coming in now, would you like Vincent to take those before we get back into the training?
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, if you have any questions now that were relevant to either what we did do, or if you have questions about what might be coming up, please feel free to chat that in as well, or raise your hand and we'll handle those before Vincent gets started with the second round.
That sounds great. The other thing about the summit I can talk about a little bit, well, for those of you that are hanging on while we're taking a break here, is we're looking for speakers. We actually have many customers who have already reached out and submitted a speaker request form that we have for the summit, and we really work hard every year to make sure that the summit is customer centric and user centric, and we provide a forum for users to be able to communicate with each other. And so if you're interested in speaking about something you've done in RAM or your organization's use of it, or whatever the case is, we would love to have more customer speakers. And if you're interested and available those dates, we can also post a link to the speaker proposal form that we have, which it's a short form. It's easy to fill out. We look kind of for high level topics. For those customers who have spoken in the past, I would hope they would say, hey, it's really not that difficult, and there's a huge benefit to doing so. So anyway, if you are interested in speaking, we can also post in the chat panel the form to the speaker request for the summit. Part of what we do if you do speak is we waive your registration for the summit. We also give you a service day that you can use at your disposal. That's available to our speakers. So if you're interested in speaking, we can go ahead and post the speaker request form in the chat window, and we'd love to have as many speakers as possible.
That's why I just posted that in there too, so that's there now.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for doing that.
I can also post, I know you covered it earlier, but I can also just include the link to the Summit's website in case anybody would like to just view it for additional details.
That sounds good. Are there any customers on the call here who have spoken in the past that would be willing to talk about their experience at the summit and if they thought it was valuable to speak or not? I'm going to go ahead and unmute Chris here. Hey, Chris, how are you doing?
Hey, Drexel, how are you?
Good. Do you mind introducing yourselves, at least to our audience here?
Sure. My name is Christopher Tenza. Worked with multiple pharmaceuticals. Right now, I'm with Novartis, and I think and haven't really been keeping track that closely. Although I think Blue Mountain has. From what I understand, I've attended every summit to date. I think I've spoken at 4, if I'm not mistaken. One of the values that is that about right, Drexel?
That's about right, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I think one of the values I get out of speaking at and presenting at the summit is sharing some of the knowledge that I've obtained with other people. I found also after my presentations, frequently I'm approached by different people asking me to sit down with them and go over some of the things that I've presented, and they open up their data set with me and we kind of dive in. This happened most recently last year as well. I had at one point a session with somebody at about 4 a.m. in the morning. So it's beneficial. It's good to share your knowledge. I'm still toying with the idea, Drexel, of this year. One of the things I started kind of playing around with is I don't know if you're familiar with Power BI, the software.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's also portions of Power BI built into Excel. It's called Power Pivot and Power Query. So you use a lot of those same DAX commands and different formulas that Power BI utilizes, the slicers, it's all built into Excel. So I started to utilize that to do some of the analytics and analysis on the data. The nice part is and I haven't gotten there yet, but you could import, you could hit the database directly, or you could import a CSV directly, and we all know that RAM exports out of CSV. So I'm not sure yet. I've been toying with the idea of doing a presentation on that. Just don't know if I'm going to have the time. As you know, we're doing a Blue Mountain upgrade at our site now, and I got a lot of things going on. But it really is, not only is it fun to present, but I find it beneficial just from the interaction afterwards with a lot of the other customers, getting their input and their knowledge and understanding how they're doing things. I learn things as well.
Yeah, that sounds great. And of course, we'd love to have you speak again, Chris. And that sounds like a great topic. So I hope you can find the time to do so. That would be good. But you know, I appreciate you commenting too on your experience speaking, because we try to make it a valuable event. And this year, with it being virtual, it will be a little bit different. But we think it's kind of the best state for this year, and we're going to try to make it as you know, authentic and give as many networking possibilities as we can here virtually. But
well, that speaks to the question I raised. Savannah probably didn't come across it yet.
I think I think Josh Muir actually wrote you back about your virtual billiards.
Yeah, I see it now. Yes. I asked, will we be playing virtual billiards at the summit?
That'd be great.
Yeah,
well, we're gonna do our best to make it fun. So.
Right. Yeah. No, it's always a good time, and I will say that I will certainly miss coming out to you know, State College and interacting with you guys personally. But I'm gonna do my best to try to make it virtually.
Good. Yeah. Thank you. We appreciate that. So I'm not sure, Vince, are you ready to go, or are you planning more time for our break here?
Yep, I'm ready to go.
Okay.
Vince, before you get started, we did have some questions come in that we were just going to take now before you proceed through your training. So if you're ready for those, I can read you some.
Yep.
Okay. The first one is that it's a very big field where they can enter in their work details, and they were just saying that it's only a 2,000 character field for their site. I guess they're maybe wondering if this can be changed.
No, there's
They
no
just
real.
stated that fact.
Yeah, there's no real simple way to change it from a 2,000 character to like a 250 character. I mean, it is theoretically possible with like some sort of a data, mapping service, but there's no just simple way to do it in the system. So unfortunately, that 2,000 character field will not be able to be queried.
Okay. Second question is it possible to mix in the same query, different query type?
It is possible insofar as the column headers are concerned, and even criterias. You know, we do have the option to add in, when you add in a column header, you can switch to a different, you know, I'm at a work query right now, but I could switch over to the event, pull in some event fields for my header, column headers, or asset fields. Some of these are more dangerous to add than others, because in all asset, you could pull in a field from the asset, maybe a usage field, because all work orders must have an asset. You have to put a work order on an asset. However, not all work orders need events. So, you know, you could have on-demand work orders or something. So simply by going in here to the column and adding an SOP protocol, you know, or whatever event-based field you'd like, this may exclude or add multiple rows to your query. You know, no, actually, for work orders, there's only one event, if any. So it won't add any multiple rows, but it could, you know, for those work orders that are not from an event, seeing as you put on this event-based field, SOP protocol, they will not display because they do not have an event. So yes, you can, other than that, you can only query off of one record type. So this is only going to display work orders, right? At best, it'll display work orders. I could further refine it to maybe only be calibration work orders, because I chose all work orders, just all of them combined. So it would have maintenance and calibration and stuff. But I could switch into a calibration work query just to further refine it. But that's pretty much as integrated as the query gets. It's, you know, that one record type. You can pull in column headers from other associated records, but it is you just got to understand what you're getting into when you do that. There are each field, if you just got to make sure, like, okay, this is from another record. Does this relationship have to exist? Like, if I'm at the schedules, if I'm making a schedules query, I can pull in information from either the asset or the event. And to have a schedule, you must have an asset and an event tied together to form a schedule. So you can freely pull in, you know, information from either of those records. However, you can have a schedule but not have a work order for that schedule. So this one would be a little bit more dangerous pulling into, because some of them may not show up Some of the schedules may not show up simply because they don't have a work order for them. But these other two would be safe because you have to have an event and an asset to have a schedule. So hopefully within that long answer, your question has been answered in there somewhere.
Okay. I believe that Josh has answered all the other questions that came in, so you can go ahead and get started.
Cool. Well, I have a little bit more to go on the query designer itself. There's only just a couple more options. I'll work. Let's do, is it this? Yeah, this month's work. So here's my query that I had from before. The other things that I want to go over here are up in the is up in the file menu. So here we can do an add similar as well. We're going to also add this to a workspace. So you'll notice here I have a calibration technician workspace, and it has multiple tabs in here. All right, so I could take this query that I just made and add it to either your own workspace, my workspace, or the calibration technician one. Click add. Query successfully added to workspace. So now whenever someone runs or goes to their calibration technician workspace, they will have that query in this tab section. So let me go ahead and refresh this to kind of bring in the change. Yep, here it is, this month's work. So that's an easy way to add your query to a workspace, either your own My Workspace or one of those default workspaces. And so what I'm going to do is, oops, oh yeah, I forgot. I'll check that so you can use your mouse. Okay, and let me. Okay. So let's take a look at this. Pretty much what I want to do now is, if you have any examples, do you have any examples of queries that you would like to see me try to build? Otherwise, I do have a couple more examples of things that you can do with the queries, this query designer. So go ahead and type in or raise your hand if you have an example of something you'd like to see. Is it possible to do this? How would you do this? So go ahead and put those in. I'll do another example query in here. So one thing that if you are looking to assign work orders to people, so like at the beginning of the month you assign work orders to people, this would be a good query for you to run. So let me go ahead and let me do all work. Let me start off on calibration work. Let's do calibration work, current month's calibration work. Just do an add similar on that. So what I want to do is, really I want to have an assignment list, a work order list that I can assign people and really take advantage of the batch update tool to assign, highlight some work orders, assign those work orders to someone, and then when I refresh my page, those work orders are no longer listed in here. And I want to just see everything that's coming due next month. So whatever's due next month, show me a list of that, and so that I can kind of assign those and get those ready for next month. So what I'm going to do is next month, I'm going to call this next month's unassigned work. Okay, so this can be a private query. It's really only for you to take a look at. Column headers, you can set that up however you'd like. So we do have all these criteria in here. I don't need any of this, the folder. I do like the month start and month end. However, this one is currently set to this month, so I want to really just take a look at what's going to do next month. +1, oops. So this would switch it into next month. So here's going to be everything that's coming due next month. And what I also want to do is add in another criteria that says the assigned person is empty, right? So click OK. So this is everything that's currently unassigned for next month. Save that, hit OK. So let me just go ahead and see if this even brings up anything. Nope, don't bring anything up. Okay, so let me do schedules. I can easily just next 30 days, change these to be all due not in May, but in June 5th. There you go. Batch update. Okay, there we go. So now these are all due next month at work. So I'm just kind of quickly adding in some dummy work orders for me to kind of show you how this would kind of look in a real-time scenario. So I've got 4 unassigned work orders for next month. So let me just even refresh this. Let's go back to my preview here, see what this looks like. I might just even have some due date greater than or equal to month start, month end, next month, assigned person. Oh, they all have assigned persons, don't they? Of course. Well, essentially, what I was trying to get at is that you would, I'll just have to kind of speak to it rather than showing you. So you'd have a list something like this, and then you can highlight a bunch. And you would want to do this kind of a query in the calibration work and maintenance work general. You'd have to have one for each work type. And because you really want to use this query for the batch update feature, so I can just come in here, right click, click on batch update, everything that's due next month, change my sign. These 7 work orders I want to put for Deborah. Okay, update. There we go. And excuse me. And when you would refresh, that's why the assigned persons equal to empty. That's where this kind of comes into play. That when you would click refresh, those should disappear from the query, and you can kind of keep going from there. And then once this query is all done, if we were looking at if my next month's unassigned work was, actually had unassigned work orders in it, you could refresh it, and work orders would disappear from that query as you're assigning them. And once there's nothing left in that query, you have everything assigned for next month. Now you cannot do this as an all work, because in the all work query, you'll notice that there is no option for the batch updates. And that's because, this is a query that has both, calibration work orders, maintenances, validations, and generals in it. And we don't allow you to batch update. We don't give you the batch update option in the all queries, so all work, because each one of those work types have different work rules associated. They have different field layouts. So it's hard to batch update some records that have different field layouts. So the tool itself is only available in record specific queries. So pretty much what that means is that you can't use it in any all work queries, and you can't use them in any all asset queries. And I'm pretty sure Those are the only restrictions. So if you make an all assets query, or if you make an all work query, you won't have the ability to use the batch update tool. First of all, any questions on that? And do we have any suggestions? Or do we have any?
Okay. There are some questions that came in. First is, what is the purpose for an individual to create an event not associating it with a work plan template or measurement data template, and not having it tied to it? Actually, and before you answer that, Josh, I saw just replied to that person. So I'll just read it aloud for everybody. But Josh's response was that most of the time we would not recommend it. However, since events are tied to schedules, you could use it as a simple reminder for anything. Okay, Vince. Next question for you is, can you build a query for inventory within the minimum inventory level for reorder purposes?
Yep. So this would be, let's go to query design. The template product has a query that's like this, which would be the parts at reorder query. But let's start this from scratch. So let me just add similar on an all parts here. And that is really a flag, right? It's a little flag that pops up on the corner of the part record that says, you know, is at reorder point. Okay. So let's say parts to reorder. And the criteria I want to use would be insert select field, and we want to do flag reorder point is equal to on. So it is at reorder point. And the way that the flags work, it's kind of confusing. On means that the flag is displayed. And then off means the flag is not displayed, therefore it's, you know, not at it's not at its reorder point, or it's not, you know, for this one that's right above it, it's not locked if it's off. So this is what you want to use right here. Parts reorder point, flag reorder point equal to on. And so I don't even know if I have any parts in the system and if they're at the reorder point. So you can see right here, this is, I left my preview window open from the last query because you can see it says next month's unassigned work. We'll just go ahead and close that and click that button again. Parts to reorder. Yeah, I don't think I have any parts in the system. Let's see if I do and if I can quickly get it to a reorder point just to double check. I do. Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and change it. Reorder point at 15, quantity on hands 16. So let's take it down. 3. Boom. So you'll notice here when I refresh this record, it has a little flag now. Reorder point needs to be reordered. I close this. Even if I refresh the query, I think yes, this query does have that as one of its, you know, visual flag indicators. So now if I were to go back to my parts to reorder query, boom, I have this, I have it in here. And it would be nice really to, I would actually probably end up changing, let me go back to it. What's this? Did I close it? Oh no, that was probably it. Okay, parts to reorder. I would probably end up changing it, column headers a little bit, make them more useful. I'd maybe put in there maybe parts stores. I could switch it to parts stores. Let's do quantity on hand, reorder point, and then stock level. You know, moved around, something like this, save. So now when I preview this query, when I look at this query, I can really see it right there. Okay, my reorder point for this part is at 15. and the quantity on hand is 13, and my stock level is at 30. So I need to restock, rebuy up to 30 in there. So it may be helpful to add those in there. Or if you're just trying to view it, you don't really need them in there.
Somebody actually also commented, and they wanted to know just now when you're doing this explanation, did you just simply +1 to the search for the next month?
For the previous query, that when I was talking about unassigned work orders, yep. Calibration work, next month unassigned work. All I did to view next month was do a +1 to both my start and end. I would shift it. 0 is this current month, +1 means the next month. Same thing with days. Local add date +0 is today's date. Local add date +1 would be tomorrow. +2 would be 2 days from now, or -2 would be 2 days in the past. So that's how that plus minus works. It's like you got a little timeline. 0 is your current day or month, depending on which one you're using. And then as you go minus, it's in months or days in the past. Plus is months or days in the future. So.
Okay, great. Next question is the field last modified only exclusive for assets?
No, it shouldn't be. I say that, I'm not entirely sure. Let's take a look and see if we can add that in here. I would say that it's probably an all work. So you can see I just opened up a calibration work query. So I tried to add in a column header. So once I scroll down, I know it's probably going to be at the bottom, right above the flags. However, I'm in the calibration work, which shows you really the calibration work specific fields. So I'd probably want to switch into the all work fields, because last modified is a field that all work orders use, or all the fields that all work orders use. So if it's in here at all, it would be probably under this. But it doesn't seem to be last modified. I don't think it is. It's that's more of a system field, so they probably don't let you query off it. I'm not seeing it. However, sometimes like the status date field, that is something that you can query off of, which is the last time it changed its status. Did change status. So it looks like last modified, I don't think is something you can add to your queries. Let me check and see if it's in the equipment. It's good. Yep, actually that's no. Can't query off the last modified.
Okay. Next question is, can you display the last e-signature applied in a query?
Like who applied it? The answer to that is no. I'm pretty sure you can't. What you can do is, does it require e-signature? So that would be down here. Or has an e-signature been applied? Requires an e-signature is down here. I wonder if it shows you last e-sig. Oh, so we do have the next and the last e-sig acquired. So this may be what we're looking for. So I'm going to put that in the all equipment. Now I don't know. This will be a learning for both of us here. So last e-sig, yeah, that's just what I was afraid of. This is the reason. Last e-sig acquired reason. So it was signed off for the review reason, right? So if I were to open up this one right here, double click on it, sign off on it, you can see my reason is review. So when I sign off on it, refresh this query, it should be the review reason. As I said, I don't recall you being able to see the last user in there. Just
Okay.
and
The next one is, oh, go ahead.
yeah, there's also
If you had
the
more to add.
yeah, there's a similar one that we do use in the, now that I think about it, in the inactive equipment. We do have the reason field. So there's just the reason field. This would be the reason that you choose when you click on this change status, right? So you can see here reason obsolete. So anytime you take a asset and make it inactive, you'll choose a reason. Let me switch to my active equipment. Okay. And if I click this, and I'll choose the out for service reason, okay. So this is kind of in the same vein, that's why I bring it up. Now if I were to switch into the inactive equipment, do a refresh here, you can see now this asset is in the inactive equipment query, and it also does show you the reason that it is in, that was selected last. So that is kind of helpful. So sorry, Savannah, go ahead.
No, that's okay. Also, I'm not sure how much time you had allotted for questions here. We do have a couple more coming in, but there's one that is looking for you to show something, and the others Josh can probably respond to. Do you want him to handle the other ones so you can keep moving through the training, or do you want to keep answering questions?
Yeah, go ahead. He can answer those, and I'll keep moving with the training.
Okay. Before you move, though, there is one final question that is just related to, they want you to walk through how you do it. So I'm going to read this one to you, and then I'll just coordinate with Josh to answer the others. But this person asked if you could walk through how to build a query that would show whether all calibrations from 2019 were completed on time.
All calibrations that were completed, all calibrations from 2019. So that would mean
they want to see whether they were all completed. So maybe a query that shows all and then shows if they were or were not.
Yeah, but for 2019, so I'm going to take that full as in that were generated in 2019 if they are closed and when. If you're using the template product, we do have the work ID, which is really, really nice to use for this particular scenario, that we have the dash year macro. So every work order that gets created, it shows you what year it was created in. So I've got some 2018s and some 2020s in here. So what I would do, first of all, is that would probably be my first filter. And I'm going to see if this is possible. This may or may not be possible just with a simple query. So let's do all calibration work in the, let's see, add similar here. So work completed in 2019. That's what I'm just going to call it here. Criteria is going to be work ID ends with dash, well, I don't have any 2019, so I'll do 2018. 2018, there we go, so we're not confusing anyone. Fix this. Okay, so this gives me everything that was created in 2018. Next, I'm going to see ones that were closed and when they were closed. So the best would be, so Savannah, read that again just to make sure it's everything that's in the closed state and when it was closed.
Yeah, so they just asked if you could have the query display all calibrations from 2019 and whether or not they were completed on time.
Oh, just completed on time. So completed on time would be the that would be the actual end date being before the due date. Unfortunately, that's not something we can do with a query, because what we can do with a query, we would want to do something like this. Actual end date is, there's no, unfortunately, well, there's a macro here. It's just date, that date field, is the actual end date, so the day was completed, would be less than or equal to, and we would want to put in here in the value, the work order's due date. That's what we would want to do. Unfortunately, there's no macro for that, and there's no way for us in this value field just to simply select another field. So that would be a report, something we would have to build a report to do. So it is not possible in a query. Other than saying, well, why don't we just put the due date and the end date right next to each other? Where's the actual end date? Okay. So we have the due date and end date right here. And honestly, we don't need anything else. Maybe some person. There. Delete those. Okay. Save. Okay. So work completed 2018. Refresh the. I'm sorry. Let me go to queries. Refresh these. Work completed in 2018. And what you could do is do an export select from here, and then kind of, do the process in Excel if you want to do it like that. That's the only way that you could do it with a query, I think. Other than that, report would be what we would need to do. That is in R3, but in R4, I'm sure it's totally different in R4, because I'm very sure there's an expression builder and all kinds of stuff that's above my head in R4. So shameless plug for R4. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Savannah. Is there another one?
Actually, well, Josh is handling the questions, but Chris Kenza said that he would like to comment. He can help out with this question. So
cool.
We'll unmute him.
Yep.
Chris, it looks like you're self-muted.
I got
there
it.
You go.
Hey, Vincent. So yes, whether it's Excel or, again, I mentioned while we were on break using Power Pivot, which is a lot more powerful within Excel, and some of that Power BI functionality. And the other place that you were going, yes, in R4, that availability is there to compare one field to another built into the query. So that's definitely there.
Awesome.
And if for those of you who aren't familiar with Power Pivot, to your point, in Excel, you can simply subtract one column from the other with the date field, and it'll provide you a value. And whether it's negative or positive will tell you whether or not you were completed by the due date.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. All right, Vincent, I guess you can continue on. Josh is handling some of the other questions coming in, and then if there are some that we need you to answer, we can just wait until you wrap up here.
Oh, so I did have another query that I had in mind. It was a work query. Darn it. Forgotten it. Oh, it's annoying. Oh, yes, of course. So one of the shortcomings of a query like current month's calibration work, right? especially if you're looking at maintenance, right? Let's just take a look at maintenance work for a second. In the template product, you do have the, these. Actually, I don't think it's just a current month's calibration work. So let's take a look here for maintenance work. I'm going to kind of rig up the same kind of query that we had. So this month's work. Shared query. My criteria would be, I'd want to have that due date kind of range in there. Due date greater than or equal to that month. And it doesn't, here's another thing. It doesn't matter if you capitalize this or not. So when you're typing in your macros, it doesn't matter. Month start plus 0. However, there's no spaces in these. So don't put any spaces in. Equal to at month end plus 0. At, oops, that should be less than or equal to. Cool. So this is, oh no, did I mess that up somehow? Oh, of course. Of course, I cleared it whenever I changed it. Okay, so the problem with this query is that it doesn't show you your on-demand stuff. You have to have a due date, right? Because effectively, you can think of it that the due date is kind of like Chris was talking about. The computer looks at a date field and essentially turns it into a number, right? So May 12th, 2020 has a number associated to it. And then, May 13th is like that number plus 1. Think of it like that. Due date with no value in it would be a due date is equal to 0 or null or something like that. So obviously null or 0 is not greater than or equal to today's date. It's less than, it's far less than. It's, So stuff with no due date in it won't show up. What I'm trying to say is on-demand work doesn't show up in this. So what we want to do is use we want to use that event ID. So if I want to include my on-demands, I want to use my event ID is equal to on-demand. Excuse me. Event ID is equal to on-demand. So now what I want to do is do an OR here. Due date is greater than or equal to March month start, less than and less than or equal to month end, or it's equal to on demand. So now this is a work order that's showing me everything that's due this month, and or it has an event ID equal to on demand. Again, it might get messy because maybe I just want to see stuff that is in the open state, So state not equal to or does not contain closed, and then state does not contain and if you start to get what you may want to do, because this is getting, this gets messy, right? These two apply or any of these three apply. So what we really need to do is start using those. We need to start using the this criteria group separator thing. So when it comes to the status, so what we would want to do is we'd want to have. Oh, this is tough. It's kind of a mind brain. It's kind of a, once you start adding the ability to just toss in on demand, essentially what you would want to do is really delete this on demand one. I would, to make it as simple as possible, you have all this. And then I would put in here, all this applies, or well, you don't really need a criteria group if you're just going to run through it all again, because I could just simply do, I could just straight up put in here event ID equal to on demand. So I got my or in there. So I just want to make sure I recreate this status does not contain closed and canceled. So status does not contain or not equal to So you could do it. This is kind of like one way to do it. So you have these here, anything that's due this month where it's not closed or canceled, or the event ID is on demand and it's not closed or canceled. So as you can see here, we could probably group, we could probably take these statuses, put them in a container and have it apply to either one of, really what it would be is we'd probably do the due date and the status. We would want to have these in a container. So, oh, I'm sorry. Let me say that again. We want to have the due dates and the event ID in a container. So both of these, so there's a more cleaner way, yet it's probably more confusing to do it this way, would be to have your statuses both as and. Great, I did that. So let me change this to status. So status not equal to canceled. So you can see here, it gets kind of complicated when you start. Status not equal to canceled. Jeez, come on. Closed. That's what I meant. Okay, so I have these two, and I want them to apply to either one of the either it's due within this month or it's an on-demand. So I would probably want to have those criteria in this criteria group container, because I want both of the ands to apply to either one of these in here. So that was a long, convoluted way of figuring out how to best do it. You could do it the way that I originally had it, where I just kind of put that or in there, and then I just kind of recreated the criteria above. Yeah, you could do that. Due date greater than or equal to. Okay, so either of these are true or this is true. So now this is what my query looks like. It should not be in the closed or it should not be in the canceled, and it's either within the month or it's an on-demand. So that's kind of how you get one query to have your on-demands and your scheduled work orders due this month show up in one query. And, if you have those other things like, display, the work is assigned to me, you would just put it up here in the top level, signed person, macro, equal to display name, right? So all three of these apply to either of these two, essentially. These two meaning this package right here or this one criteria here. It's a little confusing when you get that criteria group in there and exactly how I need to order what I'm trying to do that. Is there any questions from that or any other query ideas?
Let's see, it looks like Chris would like to be unmuted again.
Hey, Vincent. So just something for the listeners on this. And I've done a lot of complex queries, so I share your frustration once you start adding folders. What I've done, and most recently I had some really complex queries with 4 or 5 additional folders,
Hmm.
I would just create my base query, save it, and run it and look at my results and make sure that result was good. Go back in, add the second folder, make sure that it didn't. So I would take a screenshot of my first query to see when I first built it to say, okay, here's how many work orders I saw. And if I'm adding something like the on-demands, I should get a greater number than that. So
Yeah.
then I want to look at, the additional and just keep building that way, because what happens, and I've had this happen, where you put it all together and then all of a sudden you think you have it. You know what I'm saying? And then you still got to almost go back and validate your data.
Yeah.
The other thing that I do, when I know a lot of people like to know all of the work in 2019 that was scheduled and on demand completed. Well, again, build that query out slowly, start it with a month, then expand it so you can validate your data.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Very good.
It does get tricky with adding those folders and the and/or criteria.
That's like the first thing they tell you when you're in a coding class, is that you don't just write the whole program, you like do a little bit, run it. Okay, is it broken? Okay, no, fix it from there if you need to, and then you just kind of keep adding to it. That's really good advice.
Yeah, because to your point, once you build that out, now you got to go back to the whole program to look at, okay, why is it working when you got to this point and it was working?
Yeah, it's true.
All right. I think all the other questions have been answered so far.
Cool. Well, I suppose there's a lot more different types of queries that you can run. I suppose I can get into maybe a schedules query. We'll take a look at that. Excuse me. And then that's pretty much it, unless people have some more suggestions. Don't necessarily want to hold you here if it's not needed. So we do have some of these schedules due in the next 30 days on the asset schedules query. And so this comes with the criteria kind of baked in here. Due date is less than or equal to the current date plus 30, so less than 30 days from now. And the due date is greater than or equal to the current date. So a lot of the times people, if you want to include stuff that's past due, just remove this due date greater than or equal to today's date. Or, when we were working with that month start, month end, if you want to include this month plus anything that's past due, all you need to do is remove that due date is greater than month start. So now you're looking at anything that's in the past, so long as it's still in the open, or it's not in the closed or canceled state. But this is where frequently I see the most people use that local LCL add date plus 30, something like that, stuff that's due in the next 30 days. And this is also where, I guess I did get into this a little bit earlier, but it is this kind of the safest to add criterias from 2 different column headers, your all assets and your all events, because a schedule is the product of an asset being connected to an event. So you can pull any of that asset information, department, asset owner, description, kind of make it a little bit more readable. So you're not just going off of the asset ID, right? So also, move that up and make it a little bit more readable. But the other thing to keep in mind with the schedules query is that these are updated. Schedules query is only for the current, it's obviously just for that current schedule. So you may have a weekly schedule, right? Schedule's due in the next 30 days. So if I have a weekly schedule, for my one asset, I should see that asset in there 4 different times, for the next 30 days, because it's going to have 4 different schedules See, that's the thing. That's the misconception that people have, is that if this schedules query is really just that schedule record that you look at. It only has one due date, so it's only going to show you the next time that it's coming due. And then it will automatically get updated as, you know, as the configuration has it set up on the work order, whether it's prompt to update on save, or when it's in, you know, automatically updated whenever it's closed. Whenever that work order transitions, if you were to refresh the query, then that schedule is no longer set on that due date, so therefore it will be pushed out, which, you know, depending on the schedule type, puts it, you know, out of the range of 30 days. You know, if it's beyond monthly, so then it'll no longer be in the range. Yeah, I just wanted to bring that up. In terms of schedules, you're not going to see multiple. You're not going to see the one schedule appear here multiple times because it's, you know, weekly, or, you know, maybe you're looking at schedules during the next 90 days. Well, it's a monthly schedule. I should see, you know, asset 1, 2, 3 in here 3 times because it has a monthly schedule. No, it's only going to show you the current due date for that schedule. I've explained that probably 2, 3 times over, but I just wanted to share that with the asset schedules query. Another thing that I want to say is with these request queries, the request queries are a little special in that, looks like it's been removed on this one, but in some scenarios, like work request, I think it's in all work requests. Yeah, so in all work requests, you'll see here, we do have the submission comments field, right? And that is actually a 2,000 character limit field. So if you have the template, you will have submission comments in, I think, at least all the work requests. Yeah, I think all these work request ones had it at a certain point. So don't delete it because you actually cannot add it back in later. So don't just delete this column. So that's the one time that you get to query off of a 2,000 character limit field is in these requests. And I'm wondering if it's also in here for change requests as well. No, I think it's just for work requests. So I wanted to explain that. And then lastly, there is, if you're using purchase orders or more, you know, there's all purchase orders, and there's also all purchase order line items. Also, this is kind of a similar thing for work plan templates. There's an all work plan templates, which will show you just all your templates. Then there's one that's all work plan template steps. So this is like a query, which I do believe I have one in here, all work plan template steps. So yeah, as you can see here, this is my one. I have one PM in here, so you can see freezer PM. It's in here 3 times, and it's in here. There's one step for. There's one line for each step, so you can see the details are in there as well. So I can search, and so this is what it'll look like if you put, you know, on your assets query. If you put the due date from the schedule field on as a column header, and that asset has multiple schedules attached to it, so therefore it's got multiple due dates, it'll show up like this. It's listed in here multiple times, and it'll have, you know, its information for the due date up, you know, you'll have 3 different lines in there. So this is kind of what it looks like when you have grid, I'm gonna use that in quotes there, but grid fields as a column, and you'll kind of get these multiple entries in that column or in that query. Is there any other questions? Or
yes, so far there is one. They were wondering, they said that they noticed that the date in the work ID, they don't have it in their system, and they're wondering if that is an add-on option. Dash date in the work ID.
The dash year, yeah, like dash year. Yeah, so let's go back to.
Yes, that's what they're talking about.
Yeah, so this is what we're talking about right here. For the work ID, it has cal dash, just number. And then it also has a dash 2018, so the year that it was made in, right? So this is something in the template, as part of the template. And I think we put this in the 2.0 product, revision 2, I forget. There would be probably some sort of a minor service involved in that. I don't exactly know if I can just show you right now how to do that, because there could be some validation implications surrounding that. I don't know. But it is fairly easy enough to do. So it wouldn't be a retrospective thing if we were to go into your system and add this little function. So it's not like all your old work orders we get it. It's just new work orders that get generated will have that year delineate or that year descriptor in there. Yes, it's possible for us to add in there, and it's quite simple to do.
Okay, somebody else had just followed up and they said that, wait, hold on, there's a couple people typing here. They said regarding that question, you can have the year in the work ID. They think that they asked for it when they configured our system. And they said, for instance, their work ID looks like cal-0183 45-2020. So I think they just wanted to share.
Yeah. Nice. Cool. Well.
Okay, and I think, yeah, I was gonna say, I think that that's mostly, they said thank you, so that resolved their question.
Cool.
And Vince, is that mostly what you had for the training today, or we're just going to open up for questions?
Yeah, we can open up for any other questions. It's pretty much all I had for today's training.
Okay. So again, if you have any questions, you can either raise your hand and ask them aloud, or you can type them in the questions panel. And as we give a few minutes here, just pointing out again what Drexel had covered earlier, if you look in our chat window, which is slightly different than the questions panel, we do have a lot of messages going out where we give out the links to the certificate request form, different links to share our customer boost or customer lab trainings, as well as the training that's happening tomorrow. And just as a reminder, tomorrow's training is going to cover work plan templates and measurement data templates.
Hey Vince, this is Drexel. Would you mind talking a little bit about your plan for tomorrow in the training and how you're going to kind of walk through those items?
Yeah, tomorrow we're going to be doing measurement data templates and work plan templates. So I'm just going to show you, pretty much start off by talking to all the different options that you have to set up a measurement data template, and I'll make one and then make a work order, kind of demonstrating some of what we've set up, what it looks like, and then just do the same thing for the work plan template as well. Go through the options that you have when you're setting it up, and then walk through what it looks like on a work order.
Yeah, that sounds great. And if there are any of you that are signed on that think that someone else in your organization could benefit from coming to that, feel free to pass the link along. These sessions are really meant to be supportive of our customers, and we want to make sure that we're getting the word out about them. There are lots of questions about recordings coming in. We will make a copy of the session here available via recording. If you'd like to receive that, if you could send an email to marketing@coolblue.com, and we can put that in the chat window, that email address. That way we know to send you the link. We're probably not going to make the recording available in our general email list, but if you're on today and you'd like to receive a link to it, we can certainly share that with you. You would just need to email us at marketing info@coolblue.com, and we can submit that in the chat window too, so you have a copy of that email. Okay, I think, we're happy. We'll stay on the line here for a little bit longer, but again, I want to thank everyone. We had just a great audience today. So many of you joined us, which was great. We'd love to hear feedback about the session. So if you have any thoughts about it, areas for improvement, areas for changing it, topics you'd like to see in the future, please feel free to email us and let us know. Again, this is the first time we've done a 3-hour-long session for this many of our customers at one time, and so we're working through some of the hiccups here, and we'd love to hear some feedback as we do that. We also hope that everyone will join us tomorrow at 1:30 Eastern time. It is the same GoToWebinar link that you used today, so just you can click the link again tomorrow, and we'll move through the next session. So again, we're happy to stay on here. If you have any other questions, feel free to send them in the questions panel, and we're happy to answer them, or raise your hand and we can do it that way too. Otherwise, don't forget to submit the certificate form for a link to a training certificate that we can send you, and we will see you all tomorrow. I would also be remiss if I didn't thank Vincent for doing this today and doing a great job at it. So we appreciate that, Vincent. Thank you.
Sounds good. Appreciate it. Okay.
All right, that looks like all the questions we have. I think we're going to go ahead and end this. If you think of any tomorrow, we can certainly answer a couple tomorrow when before we kick off our topic tomorrow. So if you have any kind of overnight that you think of, feel free to bring them tomorrow, and we'd be happy to answer them at that point. So thank you again, everybody. We appreciate you taking the time today. We hope you found it valuable, and we will talk to you all tomorrow.